There's a 1,400-year-old document sitting in a Christian monastery that completely contradicts everything you've been told about Christianity and Islam. Not a theory, not a myth, an actual document. And if what's written in it is true, then one of the most widely accepted stories in history isn't just wrong, it was deliberately rewritten. Because this document doesn't show Muslims destroying Christians, it shows something far more uncomfortable: protection, laws, guarantees. So here's the question no one wants to ask. Why were Christians safer under the people they were taught to fear? And why has almost no one told you this? Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you won't look at history the same way again. For over 1,400 years, one of the most explosive stories in all of human history has been locked away. Locked in monastery archives, buried in seminary footnotes, and quietly erased from every textbook you were ever handed. And it starts with a single question, a question that almost nobody dares to ask. What if the empire the church told you to fear was actually protecting Christians better than the church itself? What if the Islamic Caliphate, the civilization Rome and the Vatican painted as barbaric, as dangerous? What if they gave Christians more legal rights, more physical safety, and more religious freedom than the Roman Empire ever offered? That is not a theory. That is documented, verifiable history. And in the next 9 minutes, I am going to prove it to you. 7 times over. 7 facts. So well sourced, so historically confirmed, that the only reason you don't know them is because powerful people decided you shouldn't. Stay with me until number 1. Because by the time we get there, the story you were taught about the clash between Christianity and Islam will be completely and permanently rewritten. This is Lost Chapters, and this particular chapter begins in the year 638 AD, the moment a Muslim caliph walked through the gates of the holiest city in the world and made a choice that no one saw coming. Number 7, the caliph who refused to pray. The most powerful Muslim on earth stood inside the holiest Christian church in history. Here's what he did next. The year is 638 AD. Caliph Umar ibn al-Khattab has just conquered Jerusalem. The city, the most contested piece of land in the ancient world, is now in Muslim hands, and the Patriarch of Jerusalem, a man named Sophronius, is terrified. He has seen what conquerors do. Armies slaughter priests. Holy sites get seized and rededicated to the winner's god. Rome did it. Every empire before had done it. So when Umar arrives at the doors of the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, the most sacred Christian site on earth, the place where Christians believe Jesus was buried and raised from the dead, Sophronius braces himself for the end. Prayer time arrives. Umar is standing inside the church. He walks outside. He refuses to pray inside the building. Not because Islamic law forbids it, because he won't allow it. He tells Sophronius directly, "If I pray here, my followers will come after me and claim this church as a mosque, and I will not let that happen." He prays in the courtyard, alone. Then he sits down and drafts a document, the Covenant of Umar, a legally binding guarantee that every Christian church, every Christian community, and every Christian life in Jerusalem would be protected under Muslim rule. No church would be seized, no Christian would be forced to convert, no religious site would be harmed. Written into law by the man who just conquered the city. Now contrast that with what the Christian Roman Empire was doing to its own people. Emperor Theodosius demolished pagan temples, outlawed non-Christian worship, and weaponized the Roman state against anyone with the wrong theology. Christians persecuting other Christians was so common, it had its own legal infrastructure. Heresy trials, council wars, At the Council of Ephesus in 449, a bishop was literally trampled to death by the mob outside. But it was the Muslim conqueror who stepped out of the church, who protected it, who wrote that protection into law. History rarely delivers the story you expect. And if number 7 surprises you, number 6 is going to genuinely disturb you. Because it's about what happened when the Byzantine Empire tried to take back its own Christian cities from Muslim rule. What the Christians inside those cities did next is something the Vatican spent centuries trying to erase. Number 6. The Christians who begged to stay. When Byzantine forces came to liberate Christian cities from Muslim rule, the Christians inside fought to keep the Muslims in charge. This is not a metaphor or a parable. This is on-the-ground, documented history. In the 7th century, when Byzantine forces moved to recapture territories that had come under the Rashidun Caliphate, something extraordinary happened. The Christian populations of those cities, the people the Byzantine Empire claimed to be rescuing, refused to be rescued. In Syria, in Egypt, in Palestine, Christian communities closed city gates against their own co-religionists. Some actively warned Muslim governors of approaching Byzantine forces. They chose Muslim rule, deliberately, knowingly. Why? Because life under the Caliphate was materially, legally, and practically better. Under Byzantine rule, Eastern Christians, Copts, Syriac believers, Nestorians, Armenians, were treated as heretics by Constantinople. The official Chalcedonian Church viewed their theology as deviant. They were taxed, marginalized, and sometimes physically persecuted for believing the wrong things about the nature of Christ. Under Muslim rule, they paid the jizya, a tax in exchange for military protection and legal autonomy. They ran their own courts. Their bishops stayed in power. Their languages survived. Their manuscripts were copied and preserved. The Coptic Church in Egypt, which Rome had spent 2 centuries trying to suppress, experienced a genuine revival under Islamic rule. The Syriac Orthodox Church, crushed under Byzantium, rebuilt itself. And the historians who recorded all of this, John of Nikiu, Michael the Syrian, Dionysius of Telmare, were Christians themselves. They weren't writing propaganda for Islam. They were documenting what they witnessed with their own eyes. The people Rome said it was liberating chose not to be liberated. Let that sit for a moment. If that challenges what you thought you knew, wait until number 5. Because we're about to look at the actual law, what Islamic jurisprudence said about Christians in precise legal terms. And what you'll find there contradicts almost everything the Western world believes about how religious minorities were treated in the Islamic world. Number 5, the law that protected your church. If what happened on the ground surprised you, the law behind it matters even more. Because this wasn't sluchaini tolerance. It was structured. In Islamic law, non-Muslims, especially Christians and Jews, were given dhimmi status, and what it provided was unusual for its time. Christian communities kept their own courts. They handled marriages, disputes, internal affairs. They owned property, built wealth, passed it on. They worshipped openly, protected by law, and their safety wasn't optional. It was the state's responsibility. If the state failed to protect them, it broke the law. This wasn't equality. It created hierarchy. But in a world where the alternative was often coercion or worse, it was protection. And while this system existed, in Christian Europe, minorities faced expulsion, persecution, and violence. Same period, different outcomes. And if that contrast feels uncomfortable, number 4 makes it undeniable. Number 4, Saladin and the Rules of War. In 1099, Crusaders took Jerusalem and massacred it. Men, women, children, entire populations. Even their own accounts describe blood filling the streets. Now, fast forward to 1187. Saladin retakes the same city. No massacre, no revenge. Instead, ransom, set low enough for most to pay. And for those who couldn't, he paid it himself. Thousands walked free. Even his enemies took notice. Richard the Lionheart is said to have admired his mercy. A Muslim ruler became a model of chivalry in Christian memory, because what happened didn't match the story. And if the battlefield tells one version, number 3 tells another. Because this isn't about war, it's about knowledge. Number 3, the libraries that saved Christianity's knowledge. When Rome fell, Europe lost more than power. It lost access to knowledge. Greek philosophy, science, medicine. Much of it faded, but it didn't disappear. It moved to the Islamic world. In Baghdad and beyond, scholars translated and preserved these works. Many of them were Christians, working under Muslim rule, funded by Muslim leaders, preserving knowledge Europe had lost. Centuries later, those texts returned to Europe through places like Islamic Spain, and they changed everything. The foundations of Christian theology, the intellectual revival of Europe, came back through this channel, not despite the Islamic world, but through it. And everything so far leads to something even more direct. Because number 2 isn't interpretation, it's a document. It's about knowledge. Number 2, the Prophet's own letter. In the Sinai Desert stands St. Catherine's Monastery, over 1,500 years old. Inside, it is a document attributed to the Prophet Muhammad, a covenant with Christians. Its terms are clear. No forced conversion, no destruction of churches, no removal of clergy, freedom of worship, even marriage protections. And this wasn't symbolic. It was upheld. Across centuries, across empires, the monastery still stands, untouched, 14 centuries later, and almost no one knows it exists. Which leads to the final question. Why? Why haven't you heard of it? Why wasn't any of this in the history books? Number 1 is not just the most powerful revelation on this list. It is the answer that makes sense of every single thing that came before it. Number 1, the story that was buried. You've seen the pattern. So ask yourself, why wasn't this taught? Because history isn't just recorded, it's shaped. During the Crusades, a clear enemy was needed. During colonial expansion, a justification was needed. In modern times, a simple divide was easier to maintain, so complexity was removed. Not erased completely, just buried. This doesn't mean any civilization was perfect, but the version you were given was incomplete, and now you've seen what was left out.